what are we doing in the black community? The number one consumer of a Mercedes-Benz
is us.
Us. The number one consumer of a Gucci and a Louis Vuitton, us. And they don't even advertise. Why is it that in the black community, we are always the number one consumer, but we're not the number one creators?
So you just said it, the fact that there's consumers and creators. For so long, we assume success based on consumption.
Welcome to Closing Gap Podcast, Truth About Black Wealth. I am your co-host, Mr. Eddie Richardson, here with our host and the owner of Hamilton Wealth Advisors, Mr. Wilbert Hamilton. How you doing today, Wilbert?
Hey, blessed and highly favored.
Amen. And you are tuned in to another righteous and holy episode of Closing the Gap Podcast, where we strive to tell you the truth about black wealth. In today's show, we're going to talk about productivity. And in fact, the title is True Productivity for Progress. True Productivity for Progress. You know, something that happens too often in life is we start moving and we have activity, we have motion, and there's a saying within the community that says, slow motion is better than no motion, right? And while that may be true, but we want to make sure that our motion produces some real productivity.
Absolutely.
Just moving within itself is not good enough. Right? That's why we employ everybody to have a plan, employ everybody to focus on their plan, stick with the plan, have a vision, have a mission, and clearly define your goals and objectives within those things. And those things are going to be the keys toward being able to have true productivity and being able to really progress in whatever it is that you're striving to do, right? And sometimes we know, as we'll get into it, sometimes progress comes with a struggle, right? But the thing is, when you're struggling, that actually means that you're moving, right? If you're not struggling, then you're stagnant. There is no movement. There's no movement. You can have movement. You can have movement that's without struggle. But when you're struggling, that means you're pushing through a hard thing. It means that you're progressing, right? Because all progress, progress can come with struggle. And struggle just means that, hey, okay, I've hit a hard point now, that I'm going to have to make some different sacrifices. But sometimes we just get to spinning our wheels.
Absolutely.
And we don't want anybody to just be spinning their wheels today. And so we're going to go into true productivity for progress. So Will, from your vantage point, what does that speak to you when we use this title today?
I've always, I reflect back to, growing up as a kid and, my father trying to instill hard work in me. And, being a former athlete, I always go back to right now being the summertime, and it was always the summertime was the time to get better. It was a time we had time to go to the gym, go to the weight room, which when you improve your strength, your speed, your quickness, all the things you need to do to become a better athlete. And, the weight room coach would always tell, he said, look here, man, he said, you've been in this weight room an hour and I ain't seen you touch a weight. He said, all you did was come in here and throw some water on yourself. You ain't did no work. You ain't put in no real activity to create any productivity. You're sweating because it's hot, not because you're here moving no weight. So, we want to make sure that, the people under the sound of our voices are not just, hearers of the word, but they're also doers of the word. We want to be doers. We want to have action behind our words. They always say faith without works is dead. So we want to make sure there's some works that's going along with, our faith. And you want to make sure that, we don't just speak about it, but be about it. So, at the end of the day, we want the people to understand that if you haven't sat down and done a budget, if you haven't analyzed your income versus your expenses, if you haven't looked at your 401k to see how could you improve, or have you reallocated, or did you ever make an initial choice on your 401k? Because you'll be surprised to know how many people come and sit down in my office and are working at a job where they have a 401k, but have never actually looked at the investment allocation or the investment choices. They're just invested because they defaulted into a situation. They defaulted into an investment option that the employer had deemed suitable for them. They didn't actually do their own due diligence to make sure that they were actually invested in investments to meet their needs, to meet their time frame, to meet their, future horizon and goals and objectives. So we want to make sure that, those few things that you can control, we want to make sure that we can control our controllables.
Yeah.
We know life is going to happen. We know things are going to happen, but we want to make sure that we're doing our job and we're putting action behind our words and controlling our controllables.
Right. That's excellent. That's excellent. So controlling your controllable means that, you should have good planning to move into progress. Proverbs 21 and verse 5 from the New Living Translation version says that good planning and hard work lead to prosperity, but hasty shortcuts lead to poverty. And many times the activity that a lot of us have are just hasty shortcuts.
Yeah.
Right. And they're not truly producing anything, not progressing us forward, because we're trying to find an easy way out. We're trying to find the path of least resistance oftentimes, right? And so what we have to realize is that those things don't produce anything that is progressive for us. But what it actually produces is regression, right? It ends up taking us from a good point that we are in and moves us backwards. Why? Because now we end up losing funds because we're trying to invest in get rich quick schemes, right? We want to move very fast. So that's what the scripture is talking about when it's saying hasty shortcuts, right? Haste is moving too quickly, right? Not taking the time to consider the building, consider what you're building, consider a good plan to move you forward. It's saying, hey, I gotta get it, I gotta move, you know what I'm saying? And you just run around and get nowhere. To the sports analogy, many times you see some people in basketball and a person is just dribbling and they're going between their legs and behind their back and all of that, right? But none of those dribbling moves have moved them any closer to the basket.
Exactly.
Nor have any of those dribbling moves gotten them some separation from their defender, right? And that's what happens even in our spiritual lives as well. Oftentimes we're just doing busy work. We go to church, we go to Bible study, but while we're there, we're not truly listening. We are not engaged in the process, right? We're present physically, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually, we're absent. And oftentimes that's the same thing that happens with our finances too. And I'll leave that to you to speak about that in finances, where do people usually just have a lot of motion, but without much progress?
Everybody likes to talk a good game, and we all like to think we have it all together. But the biggest thing that, comes to mind for me, and the biggest area of concern that I have, always comes back to your discipline, habits, and which leads to the right type of accountability. See, nobody likes to get tested. And even more so, we hate to get corrected. See, nobody wants to, have their flaws be displayed in front of another person. We all have that little bit of, shame in us where we don't want to be proven wrong. We don't want to be proven inadequate in a certain area. We feel like we are less than, but at the end of the day, all of us are less than in some way, shape, form, or fashion. None of us are a perfect creature, perfect person. All of us have areas of improvement. So there should be a place where you can get corrected. There's nobody above reproach. And we have to understand that in order to elevate your finances, your spiritual walk, there has to be a test, and that test has to be corrected. And we don't like to get tested, and we definitely don't like
to get corrected.
So until we're comfortable with taking the test, then I got to implore that to our listeners when it comes to their daily lives and their professions on their job. There's no way to elevate in a chosen career field in order to make more money unless you are being tested, unless you're being corrected. There's always some type of evaluation that must happen in order for us to receive a promotion. But none of us like to get evaluated.
Yeah.
So how can you get elevated if you don't want to be evaluated? You know, that you can't have one without the other. So we have to get comfortable understanding that. But the issue with us being evaluated and being tested that most of us have is when we haven't done the preparation that's necessary to be successful. See, none of us have a problem taking the test we got the answers to, but all of us got a problem taking the test that we ain't studied for. So we never want to sit down and take the test when you know you're not prepared, when you haven't done your due diligence, you haven't taken the time to read, to study, to evaluate, to make sure that you can put your best foot forward. So at the end of the day, it tells me, it's okay, well, the problem is not with you having a lack of capabilities or a lack of ability. The problem always comes back to the habits and the standards that you have set for yourself and the accountability that you have for yourself and the accountability that you don't want others to have over you. So we have to be careful where we've seen a record number of entrepreneurs, so to speak, that popped up around COVID. Everybody wanted to, some were forced because of layoffs and shutdowns. And we have some of that going on now.
That's correct. Yeah.
But you have to be careful because to whom much is given, much is required. So you may want to be an entrepreneur. You may want to be a business owner, but that means you have to be self-motivated. That means you have to be accountable to self. Are you going to make sure that you get up and go to work every day regardless of what's going on? Because I always tell my son, I said, look, your character is who you are when nobody's watching. It's not who you are when everybody's looking at you. So we have to make sure that we're holding ourselves accountable to do the things that we know we're supposed to do so we can have the success that we say we want to have. So are we being disciplined and sticking to the plan? Have we created the plan? So if you haven't done an evaluation of where you are and where you want to go, it is impossible to have progress and productivity in any area of life.
Wow, no, that's excellent. That's excellent. And so when you were talking about the correction that we have, it reminded me of the scripture, the wisdom of God that comes out of Proverbs. And there are a couple of them. I'll just choose one of them right now. And it says that in Proverbs 3:11, it says that, my son, despise not the chastening of the Lord, neither be weary of his correction. Right? Meaning that God is always watching us, guiding us. And when we go wrong, we need that correction. Right. And so what the writer of the proverb is telling us, hey, don't despise that. And that's what you're saying, is that when you need to be corrected, don't despise it. Don't turn your nose up at it. Don't get angry at it. Right. Because, wow, the correction is coming to keep you on track.
Absolutely.
Anybody that takes the time to tell you where you're going wrong, they have some type of care, some type of love or concern about you and your well-being. And that's where we stand here on this podcast. And we tell you the truth about Black Wealth is that we are not here to coddle you. We stated it earlier, but that also does not mean that we don't care. Right. And oftentimes people mistake coddling for care, but really correction is the best way to produce care. Right. Because it's in correction that you end up finding true productivity for progress. And that's why that's the title of our show today, is because we want you to progress. We want you to have productivity in your personal life, whatever your plans are there. Also in your spiritual life, in relationship with God through Jesus Christ. And then also in your resources and caring for your financial health and your financial future. We want you to progress from point A to point B, all the way to point Z. And we want that to be consistent. We want those earnings to continue to build brick by brick. Why is that? Because in scripture, productivity is a stewardship mandate, right? When God created the earth in Genesis chapter 1, verse 28, he said, subdue the earth, manage it, right? He gave Adam charge over everything that was there. Adam named everything. Adam cared for everything, right? Subdue and manage the resources that God has given us. And then as we extend that, not only from the animals and the trees and birds and all of these things that during that time, we also take into account now the earning potential that we have, right? We also take into account making sure that our time is productive, not wasting time. And that's one of the biggest faults in most things. And something that I fail to do oftentimes myself personally is managing and being productive in my time.
Yes.
You know, I spend a lot of time, sometimes wasting time that could be spent in doing something that will be productive and lead to some progress in the plans that I have and the plans that God has already given me. And so we want everybody to be faithful first and foremost, to be productive in your relationship with God. How do you do that? Well, first of all, as we always say, you got to pray.
Absolutely.
You got to always pray. You got to make sure you're in constant communication with the Lord. You know, there's an email, email server. That's Constant Contact that you can sign up to be able to send emails out to your client base, right? And I love that statement. And every time that I see their title, see their name, I think about God. I think about the fact that I have to stay in constant contact with Him at all times. I need to email Him a prayer, so to speak, right? I need to be open to receive what He also sends down as well. You know, so realizing that, you know, productivity is not just, you know, hustling worldly wise, but productivity is also staying in good relationship with God. But then also with productivity, what would you say is like the financial application of productivity?
The financial application of productivity, I would say, is consistency.
Okay.
It's, do you have your bills on auto pay? You know, because that tells me if you got your bills on auto pay, that means you've done your due diligence and you've done a budget. You've analyzed your income versus your expenses. You know, have you assessed your dollar cost average investment? So have you looked and see exactly how much you can save on a monthly basis, and you invest that into some type of investment fund, buying some type of mutual fund, ETF or stock or bond into a particular portfolio? Is that set up on an automatic basis? So that consistency, because consistently doing the right things over a long period of time is what's going to give you success. It's not a one-hit wonder. It's not going to be, I'm going to hit the lotto. There have been a number of people that have won the lottery that have gone broke. We see the stories of, of course, NFL, NBA athletes all the time who have made lots of money, millions and millions of dollars. And over time, what's happened? They've gone broke. Why?
Yeah.
It's not because of a bad investment.
Okay.
It's because usually of a lack of investments and because of a lack of diligence and a lack of consistency with managing. There was no accountability when it came to looking at those finances, making sure I'm being diligent. And it was because a lot of people around them were taking advantage of them. But if that's happening, usually it's because you're not in constant contact with God. Because if you're in constant contact with God, God is going to let you know who around you doesn't need to be there. Now, you have to listen, because I've been there before, where, all of us have been there before, where you're asking God to remove certain things and people from your life, and all of a sudden you hear God and you feel him tapping you on your shoulder, and that person he tell you to get rid of is right next to you. It may be a friend, it may be a family member, it may be a coworker. Who are you communicating with that is not living according to God's law, who's not moving in the same direction? That's why we say, husband, wife, you got to be equally yoked. We got to be moving in the same direction at the same time. So we got to make sure that we are in line and in tune with him, because he will keep us in line spiritually, physically, and financially, because he is the ultimate accountability partner. But you got to stay in constant contact with him so you can hear him. And if you're not hearing him, it's not because he ain't there. It's because you ain't reaching out to have a
Listening
conversation.
to 'em. Yeah. So that's good. So as we kind of wrap this segment up, this intro segment, then I would say everybody needs to define what their kingdom productivity looks like, right? For their spiritual life, but also what does kingdom productivity look like for your finances?
Absolutely.
That's key. And then also, how are you measuring your progress, right? Are you just busy, signing up for everything, doing a whole lot of things? Or do you really have some solidified results that you are looking at that measure your success and tell you whether you are truly productive? And we'll come back and talk about how we get trapped in certain productivity and busyness when we come back after this break. Yes, indeed. Welcome back to Closing the Gap Podcast, Truth About Black Wealth. I am your co-host, Mr. Eddie Richardson, here with our host and owner of Hamilton Wealth Advisors, Mr. Wilbert Hamilton. And today's show is entitled True Productivity for Progress. We just talked about why productivity matters, defining that and how productivity is a stewardship mandate, and also that when you are not productive, then don't be afraid of being corrected, to be put on the right track, right? That we all need accountability within our responsibility to be productive in the things that we need to do. So now, let's talk about some things that kind of trap us. The productivity trap is what we'll say, right? Because oftentimes we feel as though we are productive, but we don't have results from the things that we're doing. Right. We have a lot of motion, you know what I'm saying, but a lot of movement, but that movement is just busy work. It is not moving us forward in our plan, our goals, our vision, our mission, any of those things. So let's dive into that, and explain and talk to our listeners about how activity is not necessarily the same as having an accomplishment.
Yeah. You know, it's always fun. And I always tell this to my son. And I said, you know, you like to do what you like to do, but the things that's going to make you better, the things you don't like to do. You know, and it's really like that when it comes to our financial lives. You know, for me, I had to buckle down and start to create a budget. You know, like if you want to grow a business, and you want to expand, you want to open offices, and you got to know where to put the money. You got to know how much money you can afford to put where. So guess what you got to do? You got to do a budget. You got to create a budget. You have to live on the budget. And unfortunately, we hear budget, and I used to hear budget and think negative. I hated it. I didn't want to live on the budget. I was like, man, I want to make enough money, but I ain't got to live on no budget. Well, there's no such thing as not living on a budget, because having a budget is not a bad thing, because a budget can be big or a budget can be small. It's all tailored according to what you're trying to accomplish and what you're trying to do. But you have to have a budget. So I need to know exactly how many people can I hire? You know, how many offices can I open? You know, how many people and how many radio spots can we do? You know, how many commercials can we run? You know, how much marketing can I do to attract more people to my business? So these are all things I need to know the answers to. But in order for me to have the answers, I got to do a budget. And I have to sit down and do the things that I least like to do. I have to do that analysis. I have to do an evaluation. I have to have my accountant sit down and go over those numbers with me and let me know where would you're on track or where would you're off track. Where would you need to save more? Where would you need to stop spending so much money? You don't need to travel here. You need to stop buying shoes and clothes. You need to know you can't buy this. You can't buy it. No one wants to hear what we can't do.
Yeah, we don't want that correction.
We don't want that correction. But it's necessary in order to move in the right direction. So, you know, for me, it's always understanding your growth is going to come from your areas of pain. You know, if you ain't got no pain, then you ain't doing no pushing. Like I say, the more pushing you do, the more pain you're going to have.
Yeah.
That's why we said the pain is in the pushing.
Yeah.
You got to get comfortable being uncomfortable. So, doing the budget, doing the evaluation, making sure I write the plan down and I stick to it, making sure that I be consistent. And one guy told me, said, and great people do the mundane things consistently and correctly over a long period of time. Unsuccessful people do not do the mundane things well over a long period of time. Because anyone that's been great, they've had to wake up and do the same thing and work on the same habits and goals and objectives and likes and dislikes over a long period of time. That's how they were able to have that success. Most times we have a lack of success because we would not be consistent and we would not marry that thing that's holding us back. We won't commit to the grind. We'll go one day and we'll say, you know what, I'm going to sacrifice my Starbucks today. But 2 days later, Starbucks is back calling our name. We'll sacrifice that pair of shoes this time when the new Jordans come out. But the next time the new Jordans come out, you know what? I didn't get the last pair, so I think I'm going to treat myself this time for this pair.
Yeah.
When in actuality, you weren't supposed to buy any for the next 6 months. So can you consistently stick to the plan and stick to the game plan in order to achieve your actual goal of success? And that's where we have areas of struggle because we don't want that accountability partner, somebody to hold our feet to the fire to make sure. That is the biggest thing that I do for people in their finances is I'm here to hold you accountable. I'm here to remove the emotion from the decision-making process so we can make sure that we stay on the straight and narrow, that we can make sure that we're accomplishing that goal. I'm here to, evaluate your investment portfolio every quarter to see, are we on track? Do we need to make some adjustments? But if you don't know where you're going, how can you ever do a real evaluation on how to actually get there? So we have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. We have to start taking the necessary steps in order to be successful. And we have to understand that we are not above reproach. We need correction. We have to have correction, and you're going to get corrected for the entirety of your life. So the sooner you accept that, the better off you will be. One of the biggest problems I feel like we have in our community now is that no one wants to be corrected. We have a major problem now where we have too many parents that don't want their kids to be corrected. See, it used to be a thing when I was growing up. Any older person, any adult could correct you if you got out of line. Nowadays, we stay in our own lane. Most people don't even want people to correct their kids if they're out of line. I'm like, well, in actuality, somebody need to be correcting them because obviously you're not. Because if you was correcting them at home, that's less likely that they will be in the street needing to be corrected by somebody else. Right. I always take it as a compliment that I'm doing something right when I hear how my kids act when they're at school and I'm not around. And they always say, man, your boys are so well mannered. I'm looking like, who? But it tells me, guess what? They act better away from me than they do with me. Right. And that's the way I would prefer it. I'd rather you let your hair down when you're with me. But when you step outside this house, you got to act right about yourself. Right. You know when to get in line. You know how to say yes, sir, and no, sir. Yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am. And we can't forget that as adults. We have been trained up and you become an adult. Well, that don't mean you stop getting trained. You're just getting trained in different areas. You should know how to act. You teaching your kids how to act. Now you should be getting trained in your chosen profession. Even to this day within my profession, I still go to conferences. I still go to educational meetings. I still do continuing education and have to read and take tests and pass tests in order to keep my licenses active. I always have to continue to educate myself to stay abreast of what's going on so I can continue to be the best that I could possibly be. So that means that I'm not above reproach.
Right.
That means that I'm not above being evaluated. And we have to have that in order to be successful in any area of life. I don't care whether it's athletics. I don't care whether it's academics. I don't care if it's in our, in our entrepreneurial fields. I don't know if you've chosen profession, whatever it is, there's always going to be a consistent evaluation by somebody.
Right.
And if you're not getting evaluated, that means you're in a position as a business owner where you got to be evaluating yourself even more so. Business owners are the only one that's not getting directly evaluated. But guess what? You still getting evaluated, but you getting evaluated by your clientele.
Yeah.
So how good is your business? Guess what? If it's not as successful, well, your clientele is telling you that you need to make some improvements. You need to reassess some things. You need to evaluate your process. So there's an evaluation that's always going on in life, and we have to be more comfortable and willing to take the criticism that comes along with being evaluated, because criticism is not hate.
Right. Criticism is not hate. Criticism is actually love, and that's what is going to help you break through the busyness that does not produce anything. Is because you are able to hear the actual help that is coming from somebody's lips, coming from their actions in love. But and with that, Will, another thing that happens a lot of time that gets us trapped and think that we are productive is we believe our own press. All right, we begin to talk very well and astute about what we are going to do, but then we never start the process. The tongue is life and death in the power of the tongue, right? And so I have no issue with talking about what you're going to do, right? Speaking it, but oftentimes the talking about it, then we start to believe it before we actually do it.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's good. We do need to believe. We do need to have that faith that it's going to come to pass. But oftentimes we fool ourselves by telling ourselves that it's already done. You see, it's a difference in talking about getting a plan done and doing a plan. Sometimes we talk about the plan and then never start it, but then we talk about it as if it's already complete. And when we talk about it as if it's already complete, as if it's already done, then what ends up happening is we begin to believe that internally, right? Because now we have told ourselves that so often that now we believe it. I remember I had a client that, he used to always tell me the story about how he didn't, he played football, but he had never really got hurt. But as he got older, he would begin to have some knee pain. And so he would begin to tell people, like, they see him limping a little bit. And he's like, oh, it's just, old football injury, right? But he said his knees never got hurt playing football. And he said he had to stop saying that because the more he said it, the more he started believing that he actually got hurt. One of his knees got hurt playing football, right? And oftentimes when it comes to our spiritual lives, when it comes to our financial lives, we don't have what we are supposed to have, and we're not where we need to be, mainly because we have talked ourselves out of it more so than we have actually committed to doing the actual work. And so oftentimes what we need to do is to get out of that productivity trap, to actually have true productivity that moves us into progress, is just a simple closing of the lips. A closing of the lips for a moment and actually just doing the work.
Yes.
That is necessary to move ourselves forward. Proverbs 14:23 says, in all labor there's profit, but the talk of the lips tendeth only to penury. And what that's saying is that, yes, if you put forth the work, you will gain some profit. But if you're only talking, then that's going to lead to penury. And I know penury is not a word that is often used. And so that's why I do like reading the King James Version of the Bible, because it helps build my vocabulary. It helps me get a better understanding of what's being said. And so for the listeners, I want you to understand, penury is defined as a cramping or an oppressive lack of resources, right? A cramping or an oppressive lack of resources. So what this scripture says is that talk of the lips only leads to your lack, right? Talking leads to lack. The more you talk about it, the less likely you are to do it, right? Why? Because you're talking about it too much and you're telling too many people about what you're trying to do. And oftentimes, the more you talk about it, the less you are going to be about it. We talk a good game, right? But we don't play a good game. We don't perform. Our performance is down. And so what we want you to understand is that talking, essentially, this scripture is saying that talking is painfully cheap.
Yeah.
All right. It's painfully cheap, that it leads us to destruction. It leads us to a lack. And it's how we stay busy, because the more we talk about something, that's what leads to the busy work that does not lead to any progress. How is that? Well, because when we start talking to somebody and we hear ourselves and we're like, man, that sounds good. Then we call somebody else and we begin to tell them like, yeah, I was thinking, right, about doing such and such and such and such. And then the question we're going to ask is, what you think? And then we start listening to what that person thinks. And then we call somebody else. And then we listen to what their response is. And before you know it, we've spent 2 to 5 hours of the day talking about what needs to be done instead of actually doing what needs to be done.
Absolutely.
This talk is also what ends up getting us out of connection with God. Because the more I talk, the less I can hear God talk. And so the more I listen to other people that I talk and ask them, is this a good idea? The less I'm actually able to listen to God tell me whether it's a good idea. And that's the least likely to listen to somebody that actually gives me correction. Right. So I don't move into progress. I get distracted by my own talk. I talk myself out of what I'm actually supposed to do. And so spiritually, we have to be careful of that. That just talking about God and talking about things and not actually practicing.
Yeah.
Financially, we have to stop talking about, I am going to go and see Mr. Hamilton at Hamilton Wealth Advisors. But go ahead, go to the website, put your information in, schedule a consultation so that you can have the sit down that you so desperately need and know that you need it. You have been talking about it. And so now we want true productivity to lead you to the progress that you need to have for your financial life, for your spiritual life. Get out of decision fatigue, because that's what happens oftentimes when we do all that talking.
You know what? I think about growing up and playing, being an athlete, being in the football locker room or being on the football field, and we would say you selling a bunch of wolf tickets. You selling wolf tickets. You doing a whole lot of yapping, but you ain't got much action come behind that yapping. So he just selling wolf tickets. So we always talking about what you're gonna do or what you're trying to do, and it's easy to get caught up in it because we all have dreams and aspirations, and it's fun to think about what I'm going to do if I hit the lottery. Oh man, I'd buy this house and I'd do this. I'd give back here and I'd do that. And we've all had the dreams of what we would do if we were to get this. When in reality, we could have everything we're talking about and dreaming about if we put some action behind our words. If we took the first step and did a budget, if we took the next step and analyzed our budget, took the next step and started to save, took the next step in making sure that we evaluate and have savings in that 3 to 6 month emergency reserve. So now we can take the next step and start investing into the stock market. Most people don't realize look at this year alone with all the volatility the stock market has had, the stock market is still up and positive, almost double digits for the year, while having a 20% decline in the month of April alone. So we just think about, money that could be being made all while things are going on around you, because life is going to happen. Nothing is a straight line.
That's correct.
We've seen a lot of change and turnover and terrible things happening within our country, with people being deported and losing jobs and, forced closures. We got the flood that happened in Texas that, they still have missing people, people unaccounted for. So there's things that's going to happen. Why don't we make sure that we can control our controllable, so the things that we dream about can become a reality? I can look back at my life, and I don't know if other people do this, but I've had vision boards, and I've had, I put down the things in my planner. I still have a planner where I open it up and I write down my daily schedule, and so I can look and see. So every time I open that planner up, I should see a house, I should see a car, I should see different things. And when I look back at everything that I prayed for and wished for, has actually shown up. But it's shown up because I was so busy working, doing what God told me to do, that I didn't realize I had accomplished the goals because I had got so caught up in the journey. And that was, to me, the most rewarding thing that I found about myself, is that, you know what? You're tougher than you thought. And you are too. We'll be back in a minute.
Yes, welcome back to Closing the Gap Podcast, The Truth About Black Wealth. I am your co-host, Mr. Eddie Richardson, here with our host and owner of Hamilton Wealth Advisors, Mr. Wilbur Hamilton. And you're tuned in to the show today, which is entitled True Productivity for Progress. True Productivity for Progress. We're trying to continue to move you forward, complete your plans, continue to follow your vision, your mission, lock in on those goals, check them off, each one of them off. Don't stop until you do so. Don't allow the distractions of life to get you off track. We're here as your accountability partners to continue to move you forward, not just for our own sake, but for your sake, for your family's sake, so that you can continue to build that generational wealth, so that you can be an asset to your family. If you have kids, so for your kids, for your parents, for your grandkids, for the generation after the generation after the next generation, we need you to continue to produce. Why? Because you are a child of God. You're fearfully and wonderfully made. God has a plan for you and for you only. Each one of us, God has a plan for us. And so we want you to complete that plan. We want you to follow that plan. We want you to progress in that plan. And not only for your personal life, but within your personal life and spiritual life, God has a plan for your finances. And so that's why we come, because we want to lead you in faith and in your finances, because God blesses those that are faithful. God blesses those that continue to focus on him. So we want you to allow God to direct your path, right? Proverbs chapter 16 speaks to that end about one that is directed by God, that surrenders all that they have to God and allows God to direct them mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally. Everything that you do, allow God to direct you to where you need to go. And oftentimes we try to separate God from our finances too much. But that's why we come here at Closing the Gap Podcast, because we want you to have a full understanding that there is no separation, that the one that made you did not make you for you to detach yourself from him, right? Because honestly, just me being a believer, being a pastor, preacher, I don't believe it's even possible, right? We may mentally try to do it and tell ourselves that, but none of us know the exact time that we go to sleep. None of us know the exact time that we wake up. So none of us actually know the true essence of how productive we can actually be in life. Only God knows that. And so we need to surrender our plans unto him that he can lead and guide us to where we need to be. So we need to have clarity. We need clarity. And so as we're going through right now, let's dive into some clarity, some financial clarity, and then I'll circle back and give us the spiritual clarity that we need for to get focused in our finances. So what are some practical things from you being our host, our financial advisor, our financial planner of Hamilton Wealth Advisors that we need to be productive and be able to progress in our financial lives?
Well, I said the first thing we talked about that you have to have in order to set a goal and objective is to have a budget. We got to know what's coming in versus what's going out. And once we have a good understanding of what we got going in versus coming out, we need to start to develop some type of saving and investment plan. That means that, whether it's $100 going to my saving account of money and $100 going to my investment account of money, whatever it is, something that you can set on autopilot to make sure that you're doing some due diligence. You make sure that you have money that's going into a separate bucket on a consistent basis, because over time, like we talked about last week, that pawn can turn into a queen at some particular point in time in the future. If you save and invest consistently, it will grow into being a pot that can actually take care of you, that you can live out of forever and ever. So, making sure you got a budget, making you have a saving and investment plan. And from there, making sure you get the information to understand how to invest. We have a lot of do-it-yourselfers that's very common nowadays, that a lot of people think they know everything, and a lot of people, you think they have access and they can do what I can do, what other financial advisors can do. And, we always say in this world, it ain't always what you know, but it's also who you know. And that's painfully obvious when it comes to investing as well, because, there's a reason why, like I say, people who have representation like myself average a higher return than people who don't. That's 3% on average. That is not me talking. That's the study done by Vanguard every 3 years. That's been proven, tried and true over and over again, because, we're moving that emotional decision making from the investment process. How many people that are under the sound of my voice right now made changes and adjustments to their investment portfolio this year because of all the volatility and all the noise that was going on around the presidency and different bills that have just passed, and the stock market fluctuation, discussion on interest rates being lowered, not lowered, all the things of the tariff conversation that was ongoing and still going on to a certain extent. How many people have either made adjustments to their portfolios without seeking the advice of a professional? Making an adjustment without a plan is just guessing. Because you don't know what to adjust to. You're just guessing. So, we always want to let people know that, there's a reason why, financial advising is a profession. The same way there's a reason why, doctors have a profession, attorneys have a profession. There's access to information and opportunities that you don't have readily available. If CVS and Walgreens and Publix and if all the medicine that you could buy over the counter there solved every problem you can have, there will be no need for a pharmacy. But obviously there is one, right?
Yeah.
Because there are some ailments that you need medication that's a little bit more refined, that may be a little bit stronger, a little bit more concentrated than what you can get over the counter. Financial advisors are the same way. Everybody has access to the stock market, and that's one of the best things and the worst things all at the same time. You can invest in the palm of your hand into anything you want on the retail market, but that is a completely different thing than what I do, having access to not just the retail, but what we call institutional investments. Having access to private money managers, hedge funds, real estate funds, things that are not readily available to the general public. Things that usually have, certain limits or certain restrictions on accessibility. Speaking and working with an advisor opens doors that you don't have the key to. See, I can open the door to investment opportunities that are professionally managed, that have outperformed the S&P 500, that have outperformed and also given more stability than some of these other funds, because they're actively managed versus being passively managed. And I'm gonna give them a little game right now when it comes to active and passive, because I think it's very important that our people that have 401ks and investment accounts, they understand the difference in the two. Anyone who has a 401k that they're doing it themselves is in what we call a passively managed investment account. And what that means is nothing changes until you change it. Regardless of what's going on in the marketplace, what's going on in the White House, what's going on from a legal standpoint, whatever's going on from a market standpoint, from a world standpoint, when it comes to economic and real life disasters that strike.
Yeah.
All of these things affect the stock market.
Okay.
And even when those things are happening, if you don't go in and physically make changes to your investment account yourself, nothing changes. So which means that's passively managed. Nothing happens until you make it happen. On my side of things, clients that come to me, they get access to what we call actively managed investments, which basically means there's someone watching those accounts 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, which basically means we're not just being reactive like you are when you're making a change after whatever has happened has already happened.
You're right.
Usually you're making changes after the money is lost, where we're being proactive on this side in an actively managed account because we're reading the tea leaves. We're reading Project 2025 before Trump gets in office. We're looking at, who's going to take office in the House and in the Senate. We're looking at what bills are being proposed. We're looking at where interest rates are and where they're expected to go. We're looking at, the trends and, natural disasters. And there's certain times of year where certain type of weather is more prominent than others. There's a thing called hurricane season for a reason. So we know during hurricane season, then guess what? We might not want to buy into certain types of companies because guess what? Their stock is probably going to be down.
Yeah.
Right now, we're in the dead of summer. Well, guess what? There are stocks that are usually up during the summertime based on the activity that's going on with the general public. So these are things that we're looking at and we're taking into account when we're managing these portfolios that you as the average person, A, won't have access to, and B, don't even know to think about. Because you're not, number one, you don't have the time because you have a 9-to-5 job. Whatever you do that pays your mortgage is what you do for a living. For most people outside of someone like myself, they're not financial advisors. So they're not going to know where to go all the time. You may get right once or twice. You may be in the right place for a certain period of time, but we want to be consistent with our investing. We want to consistently do the right thing over a long period of time. So having active versus passive management, we give people the ability to be more consistent. We have the ability to have more consistent asset allocation when it comes to having the right kind of returns and taking advantage of the market. I can look at accounts that, we've managed over just the course of this year. And I was looking at a client account the other day and the market had dropped 20% in April, and he was fully invested in the market, but he only dropped 10. But then he's still up double digits for the year now.
Right.
Because we were actively managing that portfolio. We're able to get out of certain situations quicker.
Understood.
And get back into other situations faster.
Yeah.
So it gives us the ability to be more consistent with our investing. It gives us the ability to be more in real time. So, and we hear people a lot of times that say, okay, well, I hear active management, passive management. Well, doesn't that cost a lot more money? I'm like, well, I'm going to say this. It does cost. But anything in life worth having is going to cost you something. But I tell people the way to look at active versus passive management is from a cost perspective is on the retail side of things, everybody remember the E-Trade commercial with the baby in it, $5 per trade, you're paying. So you're still paying there. The difference is you can shop at CVS or you can shop at Sam's. CVS is going to be right there, maybe a mile or 2 miles from your house. It's going to be a CVS or Walgreens on the corner in every neighborhood across America. Easy to get to, quick, fast, in a hurry. It's going to be less traffic. There's no subscription fee to get in. You don't have to have a membership. But guess what? You can walk in, you can get in, you can get out. But if I want to get a 4-pack of toilet tissue from CVS or Walgreens, that 4-pack of toilet tissue right now is probably what, $7, $8?
Maybe.
If I was to take a day out of my schedule and I was to go to Sam's and do my shopping. Sam's is a little further away, right?
Right.
I had a membership fee to get in there, right?
Right. That's correct.
So it took a little bit more to get there.
No sacrifice.
Little sacrifice and a little bit of evaluation because I had to fill out some paperwork.
That's right.
But once I get in there and I'm going down the aisles, now all of a sudden I see a 40-pack of tissue. That's $20. So when we look at the cost analysis of both of them, by the time you buy the same amount of toilet tissue from CVS or Walgreens as you did from Sam's, you would have paid triple the money. So at the end of the day, which one is more efficient? Which one is more productive? So when telling people how to understand the benefit of having a financial advisor versus not having one, yes, you're going to pay because you're paying for professional help. You're paying for the access to opportunities that you wouldn't have had otherwise, but you're paying for the long-term productivity of your pocket.
Right. So advisors like yourself, what I hear you saying is you are essentially like multipliers, right? Where the things that we can do some things as personal investors on our own, right? But what advisors do, you multiply the abilities that we have.
Absolutely.
Right? You can take what I can get and you can do more with it. You have more access within the market as a financial advisor, as a wealth manager than what the common citizen will have.
Yes.
You can produce a greater return within some of the same investments because of the access and the accountability and certifications that you have. And so that's key when we're talking about true productivity for progress is that while we may try to do those things, are we really progressing at the rate that we could if we just take a little more time to have a conversation with Hamilton Wealth Advisors and Mr. Wilbur Hamilton and allowing you to manage the fund? Because as you stated, it's going to be more passive because I have a job, I have other responsibilities versus coming to a person like yourself. Then this is what you do. You are actively managing my finances. So you are planning, you are making sure that things are moving according to the vision and the mission that we've laid out in our initial meeting. And then also not only from the initial meeting, but also coming back and saying, hey, okay, this is where this is about to go. We need to make an adjustment here. We need to do X, Y, Z. And this is the way that I recommend that we do it. Why? Because I am your financial planner. I am your advisor. And so as you say that, I think about Ecclesiastes 3:10, which says, two are better than one because they have a better return for their labor. All right. And so oftentimes, that's one of my wife's and I key verses that we use when we do marriage counseling, about a husband and wife, because I do think that a husband and wife being together is more productive. But also this text also applies here that myself plus you as an advisor, gives me a greater return for my finances. It leads me to true productivity for progress that I am now, whereas I would have made $1.50. Now with you, I can make $3. I can make $4 from that same investment that I made. So we're just like, I want our listeners to realize that advisors are multipliers. They are the ones that really help us to make more, do more. And also what we realize is that when I bring my money to you as an advisor, I'm also saving on my time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? I'm saving on my time. Why? Because now I don't have to try to watch the market. I don't have to try to study the market or any of those things. And nor do I have to try to look for any blind spots within the market, right? Because I don't know the market. I hadn't gone through the levels of training that you have, and we know that there are some people that have the time and they spend the time to do those things. And, hats off to you all. And we wish you much success in your endeavors. But to those of you that are like myself that don't have the time to spend because I'm in ministry, I have my job, I have to do some other things, but I still want a good return, right? So the two are better than one. And I need to join with Hamilton Wealth Advisors to get my investments rolling. So the thing about that, Will, would also bring me to think about just being a group, right? And when I think about a group, I think about, as we talk here on this podcast, the truth about Black wealth is that we need to stop talking about what we're going to do as a community and just join in as a group and do the things that we need to do. And they all first start personally. Number one, personally, we need to make sure that I have to make sure that if I want to see the African American community be in a specific place, so to speak, right? Spiritually, if I want the African American community to be in a certain place financially, if I want the wealth gap to close, if I want our GDP to be at a certain rate, then I have to make the painful sacrifice to do so. That's what leads to true productivity, to progress us, because we want progress as a people. But oftentimes, myself included, not willing to make the necessary sacrifice that is needed. So, Will, as we are prepared to close, what are a couple of things that we just want to leave with the listening audience to go forward today as they think about true productivity for progress?
For me, you know, things that come to mind are correction is not condemnation. You know, it's okay if you don't know everything, because none of us do. But all of us have an obligation to our kids, our loved ones, and the people we never come into contact with to be the best we could possibly be, to leave this world in a better place for them. Because I don't want to just speak about it. I want to be about it. And we are here to lead by example, to walk it like we talk it, put action behind our words, and bring you the truth about Black wealth. See you next time.